Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of the Vulnerable series, a series where myself and Kimberly speak to different people, I'd say around the world, about their journeys, about yeah, a bit about them, sharing their journey, um, while talking about chronic illnesses and stuff like that. So it's gonna be really cool in today's episode. So Kimberly, if you mind just doing a little introduction of yourself.
Hello, my name is Kimberly Gonzalez. I'm the host of Self Love Corner on the Waiting Room's YouTube channel. I'm 27 years old and I have multiple autoimmune diseases. I have scleroderma, Raynaud's, and APS. And I'm so excited to be co-hosting with you, Mason.
Yes, it's very good because to anyone listening or watching for this series is very with episodes going out. Some I think were done a year ago in this series, so some are not in the present day, but they're still good. So we're not doing them again because you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know when they were. But yeah, it's gonna be good. Because Greg has been. I think you've been waiting a while, Greg. Because I know we talked last year about doing it, but certain things come up with each of us where we wasn't able to do the series last year. So which is why we're doing it this year. So Greg's been waiting a long time to come on. So I'll let you introduce yourself, Greg.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me. My name is Greg Cohan. I am 45 years old. I live in Southern California and Los Angeles, and I have multiple autoimmune diseases as well, primarily scleroderma. I have Raynaud's as part of that, and then I was originally diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid condition. And yeah, and my biggest thing is I started running to raise awareness for scleroderma, and I think that's how most people have found me in the chronic illness community, I would say.
Yeah. So I think I remember I think you went to London, didn't you? And run there.
Yeah, I think it's coming up on a year. I ran London almost a year ago, last April, I believe was the race. Because the marathon's coming up again this year, in the next few weeks.
Yeah. Are you doing that again? Was it this year?
No, it's so hard to get into the race. I got lucky. I got in through the lottery system because it's super competitive. For example, I mean, I just got rejected from the New York City marathon lottery that came out yesterday because they only accept about 4% of all the people that apply. So I think the math came out to like 6,600 runners they selected out of almost 200,000 that applied. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's
Oh yeah.
competitive.
Because I remember I think it was either you was about to go to London and do it. We had a call last year. And then you just talked about it. So did that all go well last year with doing it?
Yeah, I mean the race was great. I had an amazing time. I mean, it was my first time in London proper for an extended period of time rather than just staying in the airport for a layover going somewhere else. The race went well. It rained most of the race, but it was a really great experience. The fans were amazing. It was one of the best experiences I've had running.
Yeah. It must have been. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I found you. You you came on my For You page and I was so inspired because I can understand like doing anything athletic, especially with scleroderma and Raynaud's, can be very challenging. So I admire you for it. How did you get into running?
Well, that's interesting. I growing up as a kid, I played a lot of sports. Most of them were, I'll call them quote unquote sprinting sports in the sense of I played soccer, I played lacrosse, I wrestled in college and in high school. And running, short distances or sprint intervals, if you will, was easy. I was never a distance runner. After my diagnosis was kind of how I got into long distance running because I wanted to think of a way that I could raise awareness for scleroderma, as well as fundraise for research and things along those lines. And I was diagnosed almost 7 years ago now. So as I've gotten older, certain sports, it's kind of hard to get back into. And also a lot of sports are team sports. So it doesn't have the same sort of attention grab, I guess. And so I turned my attention to running because it was right around the time the LA Marathon. Well, it was I think I got diagnosed right before the LA Marathon, and so I decided to do the LA Marathon the following year as my first race. Because it's on a large stage, there's a lot of fans. There's 20,000 people that run the race, so that's kind of where I decided, oh, I guess I'll do endurance running, rather than trying to pick up another sport or do something that's worse for my body, like CrossFit. Not that running 26 miles is good for my body, but something that, I don't know, I feel like it would gain a little more attention.
Yeah, it's a sign. Like the last time I've done anything like that, it's not even close to what you've been doing, but it would be at school. You know, joining any races, like yeah, that you'd had competition and stuff. You get knackered. It's so tiring, so
Yeah.
tiring, and I guess especially if people expect you to do well. If it must be quite a lot of pressure. If I don't know, maybe your family, Greg, expect or friends expect you to do really well in it, and is that is it quite a lot of pressure when you do it?
Believe it or not, not really. I put more pressure on myself because I'm super competitive. And I know my first few, I would say up until like marathons, because I've done 10 now, up until the seventh one, I didn't train very well. And the training I thought I was doing I thought was good. And I wasn't happy with my time. And the last few races is kind of where I think London was the first one where I actually was happier with my time, but still not completely happy. Most people are just astonished that anyone, I think, runs a marathon because I think the statistic is like 1% of the population runs a marathon. So, no, I don't get a lot of pressure from friends and family. It's more the pressure I put on myself.
Yeah, but you have certain goals that you wanna complete it in a certain time, in each lap,
Yeah,
stuff like
totally.
that. Stuff like that. I mean, I'll enjoy watching it, on the telly. Every year you have the London one, and sometimes you get, I don't know, like people like Mo Farah. He used to join them, like like them ones. Who's quite a well-known runner. Who's done Olympics and stuff. So, it's nice. It's nice to be a part of that, I presume. And a shame it was raining, wasn't it? A shame it was raining.
I mean, I mean, I don't prefer to run in the rain, but it actually wasn't bad, to be honest with you. It wasn't downpouring, which was great. It was more like a steady, constant drizzle to something a little bit heavier. But I think just the atmosphere in general made it enjoyable just because, like I said, I didn't expect the fan support throughout the entire race. I mean, being in London, I mean, people come out, there's people hanging outside all the pubs with beers, even they close the streets for the entire day because the race in London starts at 10 a.m. Whereas, for example, here in Los Angeles, the race starts at like 7 a.m. so that they can open up the roads again. But it's in London, it's like a huge party. Everyone's outside, and it even with the rain, it didn't deter anyone. So it was actually really good. Actually, it was fun. So yeah.
That's awesome. I feel like when you're running, you just get into that zone. At least that's how I have been in the past with sports and stuff. I just get into the zone and I don't really focus on anyone else except myself. So that's awesome.
Yeah, you don't you don't worry about what everyone else is doing. You just worry about what you're doing. It happens in quite a lot of sports and in jobs. Um, like I don't know, like you'll find like maybe for football, for example, if you listen to their coaches or players, that they'll be like, we're not worrying about all the other teams. We're not worrying about what they're doing, how many points they got. We're worrying about us. So you concentrate
Sure.
on us. But they say that, and you probably say that as well, Greg. But I think deep down, you probably do worry a little bit about other people that are next to you in the race, saying, "Oh, they're going past me. I want to try and catch up to them."
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. Running's an interesting sport. I would say in other sports that I've played and competed in, the element of competition is a little bit different. I think because running, at the end of the day, I know I'm never going to win a marathon. I mean, if I could, that'd be great, but I'm not. I'm not running 2 hours in a marathon. That's crazy. But I think running is such an individual sport. that you really do compete against yourself. Yes, you'd like to finish higher than other people when you get your results at the end of the race to see how you stack up in your age group or overall or even within your gender category. So as people are running, yes, sometimes it's kind of a little bit of a motivation to say, I'm going to try to catch back up to that person. But I don't necessarily, because I mean, if you have 20, I mean, London has 45 to 50,000 people who run it. So to worry about all those other people, I don't think I have the bandwidth to do that. I think when it comes to a marathon, most people just want to finish, but they want to finish the best that they can. Whereas if I was still playing soccer or football, as the UK calls it, I'd be more concerned about other people in the other teams and how well they're playing and things along those lines.
Yeah, yeah, because what like with like with football, for example, they will say, which I think is like rubbish, really. You know when they're saying we're not worrying. So say you've got a three teams in a race for the title, they'll be like, we're worrying about ours. We're not worrying about, let's say, I don't know, Man United are so close to Liverpool or someone, and they're worrying about themselves. Well, they're partly right, but they're partly fibbing as well because they're going to look at the table after the match. You're
Definitely.
not going to do it, are you?
Yeah, no, of course. I think it would be foolish to think that you're not going to look at the other teams around you to see what you need to do to catch them and, win a championship or something along those lines.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Uh,
Greg, you mentioned you had scleroderma, Raynaud's, and what was the other one?
Hashimoto's.
Do you mind explaining to the audience like what each individual illness is and just like a summary because I know it can take a long time.
Sure. So I'll start with Hashimoto's because when I was 20, I was always kind of lethargic and tired. And I went to my doctor and this was when I lived back in New York. I was diagnosed with an underactive thyroid or hypothyroidism, which is where your body's not basically is producing enough of its hormone. So I've been on medication for that for a while. And then I started having issues about 10 years ago with my hands, kind of going numb and feeling like they were swollen. And I went to urgent care here in Los Angeles one day. And I was diagnosed at the time with bilateral carpal tunnel syndrome, which seemed really odd to me based on what that diagnosis kind of who it usually falls to.
Mhm.
Um, and I went to a rheumatologist and she ended up diagnosing me with Hashimoto's, even though she was a little skeptical about other things. Hashimoto's is the autoimmune diagnosis of a thyroid issue, similar to my hypothyroidism, but the autoimmunity version of it. Um, and nothing really changed as far as treatment went. I mean, I'm still on medication. And then at the time when I was there, she had told me to come back in a few months just to check in because people with chronic illness, especially autoimmune diseases, there's the statistic or the fact is that usually with one there's a second. So, but all along I had issues. She also confirmed my Raynaud's diagnosis, which basically Raynaud's is where you have circulation issues to the extremities of your body, your hands and your feet, where a lot of people generally just have these during the winter time when it gets super cold, their hands will go numb or they'll go white or purple, things like that. So, but when it's an autoimmune issue, it can be constant. It can happen in warm weather. It can happen when it's 60 degrees as opposed to 30 degrees. You could have flare-ups in the grocery store if you're in the supermarket and you're in the frozen food section. My hands will go numb or they'll go white or purple and things like that. So for people with scleroderma, it can create other issues. So for me, what ended up happening, why I went back to my rheumatologist was I started developing digital ulcers on my fingers. And that's usually connected not only to scleroderma, but to the Raynaud's portion because of the circulation issues. So the skin kind of starts to die on its own and you start getting these digital ulcers, which I always like to explain as like a canker sore on your finger. That's the best way I can explain it to someone because most people have had some sort of like oral sore, like a canker sore, which is pretty painful. They go away in a few days, but the difference with a digital ulcer is it could take upwards of 3 months for one to go away. And It's basically an open sore on your finger, non-contagious, but they look really disgusting. And for me, I always get one on my middle finger on my left hand, and the minute I tap something, it's like excruciating pain. So I had an ulcer that I think I was trying to self-medicate for 2 months. Even though I was supposed to go back to the doctor 2.5 years before that, I decided not to. And my ex-wife at the time told me, you need to go to the doctor. And that's when I got diagnosed with scleroderma. And scleroderma basically is the hardening of skin is the generalized definition of it. It's where your body produces collagen in excess and deposits it in places it's not supposed to be. For me, I have what's called systemic or limited systemic sclerosis. There's also something called diffuse. Those are the two main and more serious forms of scleroderma. There's also two others that aren't as well, we'll say they're not life-threatening, so to speak. And the reason I say that is because both systemic and diffuse, your body can deposit collagen or scar tissue in places such as your lung, your kidneys, and cause issues with your heart. Um, so yeah, so that's how I generalize or define all three of those in a story sort of way, if that helps.
Yeah, I mean, just because I know they're very difficult diseases, and like I said, if you get down to it, you can write a whole book. But that's just kind of the summary, and it's awful. How you mentioned that you were diagnosed with something else. I was diagnosed my illness fully what's it called, like manifested as I got older. But that's the thing with autoimmune diseases. You know, you could be diagnosed with something and then take the wrong medication and everything, and then like 4 years later, then I was diagnosed with scleroderma, and by that time it's like the ulcers got worse and everything started getting worse. And that's what I feel like why awareness is so important, to hopefully like limit the amount of time so you can get diagnosed sooner and probably avoid all these other complications throughout the journey.
Yeah, I think also the one thing, unfortunately, is that what I have found throughout my journey and just the research and understanding that I now have is the fact that you might not have a diagnosis, you might be going through life and you may have the susceptibility, or you may have an autoimmune disease that has not manifested or come to the surface, and then there's some sort of trigger, whether that's stress, environmental, what have you, that just is kind of like quote unquote lights it on fire. And that's when it comes to the surface and now you have something. Because I mean, looking back on my life, I always had issues with hot and cold, like in the sense of when I was out in the snow as a kid on the East Coast of New York, um, I would always have issues with my hands getting white or purple compared to my friends. And we just figured, oh, my hands got wet. I was out in the cold too long. And thinking back on it, I may have had Raynaud's since I was a kid. I don't know. And just having that, and then my life being stressful here for years, and and what have you, is kind of probably what caused scleroderma to come out. I mean, it might have always kind of lied dormant in my body. And that's the unfortunate thing. But yes, it's important, the awareness side, not only for when you're diagnosed, but the importance of awareness on how to take care of yourself even before something happens is really important too, I think.
Oh, yeah, definitely. How do you manage stress, especially when coming onto a race? Because I know stress is a huge factor, and I can imagine for a race it gets really stressful. So how do you kind of control those feelings on your end?
Well, I think for me, I think it's kind of two-sided. One is when you talk about a race, the stress is more the stress on my body versus the mental stress, because going to a race, especially certain ones, now that I've been doing it a bunch, it's more fun than it is, you know, oh my God, I'm so stressed out. I got to run tomorrow. Like, yes, that's there, but the stress on my body is the big thing when it comes to like a marathon or a race. And that usually, inevitably, in any sport, there's that physical stress you're going to have. Marathoning is definitely a lot harsher on your body, but I think the way to control that is proper training, because obviously it's harder. my earlier races were a lot harder for me because I didn't train very well. I didn't run long enough distances in my training cycle versus what I do now. So yes, towards the end of a race, my body's kind of broken down, but everyone's body is broken down at that point. So I make sure that my training is really good. My nutrition going into a race and during a race is really good. And then as far as other stress, I mean, daily life stress, that's the hard one. I try to stay active. So being physically active, taking care of myself that way. Um, Also trying to eat well and do certain things, whether it's meditation, taking yoga, writing, is a good way to release stress. And, you know, I'm just like everyone else. There's days I manage it really well, and there's other days where, if a lot of things are going on, I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve, and it's worse. So, there's no foolproof way, but I try to take the little steps that I can to manage personal stress, we'll say.
Yeah, that is really good. Like how you do that, Greg, with like managing going into those races, because it must really impact like mental health as well. Going into it, making sure everything's okay with your various different chronic illnesses,
Mhm.
making sure everything's okay before you enter the race. Just certain precautions that maybe something happens in during the race where you can go, um, and yeah, it's very important, isn't it? Just to analyze these things in case things happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you say that. I don't know if I necessarily going into a race have a game plan as like, what if this happens? I try not to think in that respect. It's more, I know when I can push my body and when I might need to, let's say I'm struggling, I'm on the struggle bus, as people say. I probably, if I have to realize I may need to walk at some point, I give myself that grace versus, as much as I'm like, I want to push through. I also know that, as I think I would give this advice to anyone, even someone without a chronic disease, because you could do more harm than good if you're kind of at that point where, if you continue to push, you might have some issues. So I kind of, that's kind of my game plan going in. I don't think about, well, what happens if this happens? Because I mean, even in everyday life, something can happen that's out of your control. It's really hard to plan for all of those contingencies. But yes, I am mindful. I do have a plan going in, making sure that, I'm drinking water at certain points, or I'm eating extra food at certain points, versus just letting my body kind of deplete down to nothing. Or even if, getting closer to the race, I'm having issues, whether I might have an injury or something like that, making sure that going into the race, I know it's not going to be my best race, that it's okay that I run slower or, take whatever breaks that I need and things along those lines.
Yeah, it's kind of about, I guess, just taking part, really, isn't it? Um, just taking part, knowing that people with like a chronic illness can do these things. Like it's not that you can't, but you're just proving to people that you can run a marathon. Um, like one that you can manage. Like you like maybe like a few years ago, you might not have thought you'd never do even a London marathon, let alone any marathon.
Yeah.
It's like achievements that you'll probably remember for forever.
Yeah, I think, and that's one of the things, I don't, other people in the scleroderma community, because I have a lot of people that reach out to me, and a lot of them say, well, I can't run a marathon. I say, my thing is, I didn't start running a marathon to make you run a marathon, right? I think I did it based on basically what you just said, right? It was more of a way to inspire people, to show them that anything is possible. And maybe not everything is possible, because there are some people, I'm fortunate, knock on wood, is that I don't have lung involvement. So I'm able to still run the races that I'm able to run. And some people are not as fortunate, but that doesn't mean they can't get up and go necessarily walk every day. Or, if their passion is gardening, which is a great physical activity, that they can't go and garden. Granted, you might get tired and have some issues, but something is better than nothing. And that's kind of been my mission, is to show people that just because you have an illness And with scleroderma, you know, as Kimberly probably knows, it's you never know what's going to happen. No, there's no, you know, here's step one, you're going to step two in 2 months, and so on and so forth. You never know. So I try to inspire people that you still need to live your life. You may need to make modifications, but that doesn't mean that you can't do anything anymore. And that's why I started running, and trying to motivate people to stay active and to do something so that they don't just become sedentary, because that's the easiest way for your illness to progress, is by doing nothing. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. Have you always been like growing up? Have you always been like maybe at school? Like, have you always liked running? Like, is that something you've always liked?
Not necessarily. I just like being active and playing sports. Um, I was always, I've been an athlete since, I mean, I guess I started playing competitive sports when I was like 5 years old, I guess, or I don't how whatever the youngest age my parents could have enrolled me in some sort of sporting event. That's when I started. I never competitively ran. That wasn't my thing. I played team sports until I started wrestling, which is partially team, but a lot individual. I didn't really get into running until literally until I was diagnosed with scleroderma. I tried years before that, probably a few years before that, but it never caught on. I think just I started running. I'm like, this is boring. And then it really took until my autoimmune diagnosis, my scleroderma diagnosis, to start running.
Yeah, yeah. With all your different chronic illnesses, Greg, do they kind of intervene with one another? So, like, does one cause another chronic illness to stop doing something? Where like, do they kind of battle each other? Is kind of what I'm saying.
I mean, I don't think so. I think they they live in symbiosis or something like that. Um, it's so hard to even, I don't even think I could tell. I mean, the only thing I could say is like I attribute Raynaud's to scleroderma at this point. So I think it's when I have any issues, whether I have a digital ulcer or I have a Raynaud's attack, it's related to scleroderma. As far as my thyroid condition goes, I the only thing I could say is I don't know which one makes me fatigued, if it's the thyroid issue or if it's scleroderma, and one or the other. So I think they all live in a mutually beneficial relationship to one another.
That's good. I guess that's good. Yeah. Um. Yeah. It's good where you can. I guess it's hard to analyze, like you say, with fatigue, which one it is, because
Sure.
all the different ones you have. But did you notice before you got diagnosed with your first chronic illness, let's say, did you notice any like sudden changes? Maybe with fatigue, or it might be another thing. Did you notice like sudden changes where how you were feeling within yourself?
Yeah, when I was first diagnosed with my thyroid condition when I was about 20 years old or 21, maybe I was 22, but it was right around the time I graduated from college, from my undergraduate studies. It was just the fatigue. I was tired all the time. I had fatigue when I was in high school. It was funny because when I got diagnosed with my underactive thyroid, the doctor at the time asked me if I ever had mono, because I had a positive Epstein-Barr, I guess. Um, so I told him no, I was never diagnosed with it, but maybe that's why I was tired in high school sometimes. But um, the fatigue, I think, was the biggest thing that led me to going to the doctor when I was in my early 20s, that got diagnosed with at the time hypothyroidism, so my underactive thyroid. Um, so the fatigue has kind of stayed with me throughout um, throughout my journey for the last 25 years now or so, since that diagnosis. And obviously scleroderma fatigue is part of scleroderma as well. So I think when it came to getting diagnosed with scleroderma, the main sign to my doctor was the ulcers, my digital ulcers, and the Raynaud's, and then obviously looking under my skin and things along those lines.
I just got, I don't know if you have gotten an iron infusion before. I know that's something my doctor recommended because I was complaining a lot about fatigue. And she's like, hey, try this iron infusion. And I will say it's a life-changing thing.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, you could talk to your rheumatologist. I don't know with your other chronic illnesses, it might come into play. But I know for me, it's been like I've been transported into a new body.
Well, that's great. Yeah, no, I've been taking iron supplements actually. So I mean, it's also hard to tell because there's certain days I do a lot more. So sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm just tired. I don't know if that's because of my autoimmunity or if it's because I worked a long day and I was at the gym and I ran and did so and so. So, but yeah, I mean, I started taking iron supplements. I think they help. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I think I've taken the iron before as well because I suffer with fatigue as well, and it's hard to it's hard to see if they help or not because you still get tired anyway.
Yeah,
If you're doing nothing or if you're doing something, so it's hard. It's hard to analyze what's helping. Like sometimes I'll like yesterday, for example, I went out for a walk. Probably got up really early as well. And I'm met up with a friend. When he leaves, I'm falling asleep. And I'm thinking, I wake up. It's about 8:30 in the evening, and I think, sometimes when you wake up, you're still tired.
yeah,
And you're still tired, and you go back, and you think, I can't. I've got to stay awake now. But yeah, like I never used to do that. Before I was diagnosed like with Crohn's, chronic illness. So life changes with that kind of sense. 'Cause we all get fatigue anyway before we all got our chronic illnesses, but it's just very, very, very tired, isn't it? Once you want the difference now.
yeah. It's just I think it's hard to tell what's causing what, honestly. That's just my personal opinion. Um,
Yeah.
I guess if I did nothing all day long, I'd be able to maybe, or I did, let's not just say nothing all day long, but just no physical activity other than maybe walking from my house to my car to work or something like that. Maybe I'd be able to tell, but I don't, it's challenging because the world is stressful and a lot of people are tired. So I don't know what the answer is to that.
Yeah, there's different forms of depending on what you're doing, really, isn't it? Um,
Yeah.
like I did a skydive. Um, I think it was last year, either last year or the year before. I'm losing the track of the years, but I did the skydive. I was so tired after I'd done it. I fell asleep. It was almost like you're so tired, beyond fatigue, any fatigue I've suffered before. So I'm falling asleep. I'm asleep for a few hours, and so shattered. I think it may be the anxiety of going down the plane, but it's different. It's different fatigue than I've ever used to before. But yeah, fatigue isn't friendly. I guess we all want to stay up. We all don't want to go to sleep. We all don't want to have these naps in the middle of the day. But that's the thing we have to do with our chronic illnesses. Which ain't a bad thing. We all like a nap, don't we? We all like to have a good sleep.
Naps are great. I love naps sometimes when I can do them.
Yeah.
I don't even have a choice. It's like it has to be. I have to take a nap. If not, I won't make it through the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. But do you find, so say you go to a nap, will you go to sleep like in the evening, or is that hard for you to go to sleep after you've had a nap in the day?
I think it depends what time I take a nap and how long I nap for, to be honest with you. There's times I'll come home Saturday after work and I'll take a nap and sometimes I'll just crash for 3 hours and then it will be more challenging to fall asleep at night. But if I do, if I'm just taking a nap for like 30 minutes or so, as long as it's not too close to the end of the day, I'm usually okay. But it depends. As long as yeah, if I do one of those really long, almost like I'm going to bed for a good amount of time in the middle of the day, it's definitely harder to fall asleep at night.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It all depends what time it is and how long it is, and yeah, it is
Yeah.
for sure. Um, right. Before we finish, because we've talked about a lot. We talked about marathon. We talked about chronic illnesses. We talked about naps. We talked about lots of things. Before we go, before I say anything, is there anything that you want to say? Any more questions that you have for Greg, Kimberly?
No, no. I had a wonderful conversation with you, Greg, and I will like to talk to you again on my own YouTube channel to spread more scleroderma awareness. But up until now, I think we pretty much covered it all.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's been really nice speaking to you, Greg, because I don't know. Well, I do know some bits about a few of your chronic illnesses, but it's nice to get educated in a different sense of like doing marathons and all other things that you've mentioned. Is there anything that you'd like to like mention, or any advice that you'd want to say to maybe other people that have a chronic illness, or the ones that you have at all?
Sure. Well, first, I don't know if you're aware, but if people want to learn more and to also understand a little bit more about my journey, I have a documentary that came out last year. It's available on Amazon and YouTube. It's called Run, Greg, Run. It basically even covered my journey during the pandemic because everything was supposed to happen instead of the pandemic, and then the pandemic happened. So they can watch that. I think this the primary takeaway is um, as I the other reason I started running and raising awareness is because with scleroderma especially, and even Hashimoto's, I mean, to my knowledge, we don't have a public figure in the sense of like a huge celebrity that has the illness where it's a lot more, public knowledge present. I mean, Bob Saget, unfortunately, when he passed away, people became even more aware of scleroderma, even though he was a huge advocate and did a lot because of the passing of his sister decades ago as a result of scleroderma. I think for all of us, it's really about us being our own advocates. I think we we just whether I trust my doctor, but I also do my own research. I ask a lot of questions. I also speak up for myself. I think that's a huge thing is people being their own advocate. Um, some people obviously are a little bit more shy compared to other people and they're less likely to speak up. But I think the other thing, honestly, is figuring out how to still live your life despite what diagnosis you may have, whether it's Crohn's or scleroderma or Hashimoto's or, anything else. It's you still need to live your life because even though you have a diagnosis, you're not dead, right? You're you, there's you don't have to run a marathon, but stay physically active because that no matter what you have, it'll make you feel better. And there's healing properties in physical activity as well as, um, having mindfulness to help with your mental health because your mind-body connection is really big when it comes to illness. Really, I think that's the biggest thing is that people need to take ownership of their life a little more, and not think that everything, even though it's challenging, it's tragic, it's hard. I mean, I broke down and cried in tears when I was first diagnosed. But life's not over. So I think we have the ability to do great things. Our body has the ability to do great things. And while it may not be perfect, there's ways to improve our health and the way we feel on a day-to-day basis by staying active. So I think that's my biggest thing I would give anyone that has a chronic illness.
Thanks, Greg. Because I completely agree with everything you're saying. Especially like with getting diagnosed, it's very hard. I think I cried as well. Getting diagnosed because it's difficult. It's difficult when um you're getting diagnosed with it. But yeah, I completely agree. If you can send like your documentary in the chat, that would be
Yeah.
that'd be great. And then we'll watch it as well and we'll share it um, so other people can see it as well because I think that's amazing that you've done a documentary. I think it's really cool, especially during the pandemic because a lot of people still think that is gone, like COVID's gone when it's very
Yeah.
much still about. So that's really important. That would I think that's really good. Um, but yeah, so to anyone listening, well, actually, Kimberly, is there anything else, last words that you want to say before we go?
Yeah, just kind of like what Greg in the summary said, be your own advocate. Don't be afraid to speak out, because we're, at the end of the day, we're the ones that live with the illness, and the doctors walk in and see us for 30 minutes. So yeah, only we know exactly how we feel.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Kimberly, and thanks, Greg. It's been awesome speaking to you today.
Thanks for having
Uh,
me.
yeah, I know it's been long awaited chat, I think, but we got there in the end. We got there in the end. But yeah, to anyone listening, watching today, we hope you enjoy this episode of The Vulnerable, the series, which is this summer. For us at the moment, it's not summer, but to you listening, it is. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. It's a really good, unique one, a different one that we haven't done yet. We haven't done one about. I don't think we've done one about this topic for this series, so it's good. But each episode is going to be different, so really awesome. But to Kimberly and Greg, I hope you have a nice rest of your weekend. And yeah, thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you.